proudest day and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all we said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears, the Rally podcast. And we're flying through the 25 season. And Connor, we're joined by another special host this week, Luke Barney.
Welcome along, Luke.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was meant to come in after you said to come in. Hello, everyone. Hello, gents. Great start from me. Supposedly a professional, and I messed it up badly, so apologies. But thanks for having me on. It's genuinely been quite a while. There was a point, I think this time last year, I was on about every other week. I had a few jokes about that. But yeah, it's nice to be back.
Yeah, but you are kind of busy at the minute. You know, you're back with Dirtfish and things are flying along for you at the moment.
Yeah, that's kind of you to say so. Yeah. No, I guess they are going well. Yeah, I'm still getting paid by rallying, so that's the dream. And yeah, there's some exciting things happening over at Dirtfish. I can't say too much, but there's a little tease for everybody there if you want to grab onto it. But yeah, I guess happy days.
And not only Dirtfish, you're going to be back in the co-driver's seat for a bit.
Yeah. I didn't know if we're going to go there or not. Can you sense the nerves? Yeah, I said that there. Yeah, I had a message of a driver called Martin Page when I was in Sweden. And I haven't told him this actually, but I've seen the message really early in the morning, and I sort of looked at it, and you know how on your phone you get a notification, it shows you basically the start of the message, but if it's longer than whatever, you can't see the full thing. So I'd seen like the gist, but I wasn't. I was like, surely not. Surely he can't be saying this. So I sort of sat on it all day, and like didn't want to open it in case it was not what I thought it was. Then it came to the end of the day, and I opened it. I was like, wow, okay. So I had to make sure it was okay to do, because there's a potential clash with something that might have complicated it, but got the all clear. And yeah, I'll be doing the Jim Clark Rally in a little Mini. So that'll be fun. 2 years after driving it, so we'll finally get to answer the age-old question, which is more fun, driving or co-driving? I think I've possibly made my mind up already, but I can tell you which my bank balance prefers as well. So there you
go. Yes, so exciting month ahead now in May. Look, Gran Canaria last weekend, the World Championship is tipping along. That was round 4. Unbelievable, we're so far into the season already.
Yeah, and this crazy thing is it gets a lot, I was going to say worse, it depends on your outlook. It's better in a lot of ways, plenty of rallying, but it's quite an intense schedule for those involved. But yeah, it's getting even more jam-packed now with a run of 7 gravel rallies. But to be honest, for me, I've been pleasantly surprised by the narrative we've had this year, because it's not what I expected. Parts of it maybe are, and I won't say too much on that, but I think Robin Perez certainly dived towards the start of the year, and then the emphatic return to form in Canaries was quite something. Elvin Evans with a big championship lead, but what we've learned this year is, yes, the point system is similar to last year in the Super Sunday and everything else, but without the banked Saturday points, you can now score 35, and it's all very different, but we're noticing that it's actually probably easier to score big, what seems to be anyway, on a weekend. So we don't actually know how much the points gap means and all this kind of stuff. So all that has been exciting, but yeah, plenty of action still to come.
That's for sure. And Connor, it has been the point system seems to be a lot clearer this year. You know, we're not kind of look at Saturday and then we have to add on Sunday and take away -2 and the square root of 5 and all this kind of thing. It's a lot more simpler to work out.
Yeah, it certainly is, and there's a lot less requirement of a calculator or an abacus, during an event to see where we're at. But at the same time, I know it has helped resolve some of the issues around the high point scoring, but I suppose if we look at the previous event where Adrian Fourmeau, retired after a few stages basically, and same on the Saturday, and then came back on Sunday, blitzed it, took a load of points. So, it hasn't quite equalised everything yet, but I suppose it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, look, that's probably a fair point. It's a step in the right direction. It's maybe not completely, all the creases ironed out, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, there's certainly ways I'd perfect it. And I'm starting to think you two have hacked my computer, because I actually have an idea pen to write on Dirtfish about this, which should be out this weekend, if you listen to the podcast when it comes out. So, yeah, look out for that. So maybe I shouldn't say too much of what I think at this point and not steal it. No, what I will say is I agree. I think it is better, but I don't think it's perfect. Whether what I'm thinking as a solution is perfect, I don't know. But yeah, it's certainly intriguing. But you're right, I think, to highlight the 4-wheel case. I think that's kind of the only real example this year we've seen, actually, because he's kind of one of the only drivers who's had a really bad start. A lot of them have been generally, or the exception of Robin Perry, retired on the final day in Kenya, which is the worst time because you miss out on all those bonus points. But yeah, it's generally been the guy that's been winning the rally that's kind of scooped all these bonus points, which is why we're seeing such big swings in the championship.
And Canary, it seemed to be a really good addition to the championship. Drivers, everybody seemed to be really enjoying the atmosphere. The crowds were huge. It seemed to be an event that shows good potential.
I was definitely one of the lucky ones because I kind of suspected it when I was there, but having seen a lot of chatter online and spoken to a few people who've watched it at home, it was, as a sporting spectacle, not the richest. It kind of got very predictable quite early, which is probably down to the dominance of one driver in particular. But you do tend to see that with a dry tarmac rally. If there's not really any variables, things kind of get set in their ways and you're almost waiting for the rally to finish. But on the ground, as you said, the energy was electric. We all kind of suspected there'd be lots of people going over, but it really did prove. I think it was Wednesday, we were walking around the service park and it was rammed on a Wednesday. Nothing happens on a Wednesday. Everyone was around. So that was a clear indication that things were going to be interesting. But I have to say a huge credit to the rally organisers and the spectators themselves, because there were, certainly as far as I'm aware of, no major issues at all. There was not really any delays. Everything just ran properly. So yeah, it was a big effort to make all that happen. And yeah, it's nice to see rallying, I guess, appreciated so much, because we're all aware of, I guess, the health of the WRC and the fact it's maybe not as strong as it once was, and we're all trying to make sure it gets healthier in the future. But this is very, I guess, a clear indication that rally fans do still exist in their droves, very much like they do in Ireland, boys. So yeah, it was
yeah. Connor, we're quite used to large crowds attending events and one thing or another, but to see that and the way the organisers want to so much smaller, on the Saturday evening, the basketball court stage and the power stage, maybe a wee bit Mickey Mouse around the kart track, but showing initiative is something different.
You look, those Gymkhana style stages, look, they're not everybody's cup of tea, but as you and I have harped on before, with where the sport's at, it's about bringing the sport to the public and getting as many members of the public to see it as we can, so they can fall in love with it. And one of those ways, it is the donuts, it is that basketball stadium, basketball court. Those are what the young kids and people who maybe aren't familiar with the sport are going to walk away with, and what they're going to remember. And the events do need them, as much as maybe we don't rate them as being the proper spectacle of what rallying is, or maybe really showing what the competition of rallying is. They really do bring it home to the crowds, and it gives the masses an opportunity to experience what we all, love and have loved for years and go to see ourselves.
And the basketball stage, sorry just to cut across, but was mega. There is a video on Dirtfish's channels where I think it's quite obvious how excited I got that experience. It was like a combination of any kind of normal sporting event, and I say normal as in something you'd expect to see in a stadium. And this one obviously being a basketball court. I've never gone to see a basketball game, but I can't imagine it would have that same atmosphere. And I think we're all vaguely aware of how loud a Rally 1 car is, but when you hear the red limiter bouncing off without anti-lag within this stadium environment, is quite something. So yeah, that atmosphere was cool. And even the go-kart track, actually, these are the two stages I watched at the weekend, because when you're covering the rally, they're the easiest to access. And even that was quite good for one of those stages, certainly. So yeah, I have to say huge credit to them. I think it was a very, very good rally, just from a sporting narrative sense, potentially, I don't want to say spoiled, but yeah, it was very clear, I think, from stage one who was going to be the winner.
Yeah. But like, we even think back to the 80s. Whenever rallying was in the UK, it was like a popular sport. It was on on the news. It was in the papers and one thing and another. And the Mickey Mouse stages, as Mark Gillen used to refer to them on the Sunday. But like that's what made it popular. That's what drew the crowds. Like, we should be attracting more of this kind of thing. Hiding it away in a forest is not going to bring the crowds. We need to bring it to the people.
Connor, you remember the 1980s. I'll let you say that one.
I certainly do. Yeah, look, tuning into that Top Gear coverage of the RAC and the Chatham House stages or whatever it was called, the various ones where they did around the stately homes. Like, it was the warm-up. It was the spectacle. It got you excited for what was going to come over the next 3 or 4 days as they got into Kielder and the other forests. But what I remember, it's the coverage. Those places were lined with spectators and the kids and the families, and everybody was there to watch. And the excitement is, your Delta S4s came past with it popping and banging and the flames shooting at the back in the 205. They were magical when you look back at those clips on YouTube now. Like, it was magical times. But the thing was, you saw the crowds. You really did see the crowds. And, not everybody can make the trek out to the forests or wherever. And if you can go to a big event where you have a chance to get something to eat, you have a chance to maybe see the cars lined up before the start, and then to get to enjoy the spectacle, like, it is magical.
And meet the drivers, because like we have seen ourselves, the personality of the crews. Look, you're able to experience that firsthand. They love the interaction with the crowds as well too.
Yeah, they do. And even the ones that tell you they don't, I think they do deep down. Because they know that it's like something that, because this is the thing, all rally drivers, or anybody actually involved in any way with that sport, this sport, our sport, is a fan. And whether they think they are right now because it's profession, they always were at one point a fan. So we all know what it's like to be on that other side of the fence. Every driver there, I said we as if I'm one of them, that's terrible. the drivers know. They can relate to that. They will remember the day when they went up to see their heroes, and it's really special to see it, because while for them they're just in the zone, they're in a media zone or a service, whatever they're doing in the rally, it's one very tiny part of their day which they're not going to think about 5 seconds later. But for who they've interacted with, it's everything, and that's a memory they're going to treasure forever, and it's something that could genuinely inspire them to become the next driver of the future. So yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, because we've all seen like Chris Ingram getting his photo taken beside Ogier, or there's always a story of like Alistair Fisher, standing beside Bertie Fisher. It's those wee small interactions, and it was only like a quick snapshot, maybe only lasted 5 seconds, but it's a lifetime of memories.
So the real question I've got is, at what point, Kevin, have you had someone come up to you and taking a picture, and in 20 years' time they're going to be the next big podcasting thing?
We'll have to wait and see. But there is a photo out there somewhere on the internet of me standing beside Tony Pond's Metro in Donegal in 1985, and that started my love affair with Metro. So
1985, so that was the year. Yeah, this is when the Metro was being developed, wasn't it?
Yes.
So this is before it's WRC. Yeah, because I only recently found out about this. It's when I hassled the two of you for pictures, actually. I tend to do that quite a lot. If anything Irish goes on the website, it's like, hey, maybe you're at this event. Yeah, maybe not. I know this guy that was. It's a good little network we've got. Yeah, I was researching WRC drivers that had come to Ireland. And yeah, it was quite fascinating. I had no idea that had happened. So yeah, I found some videos and I was mesmerised. So yeah, I can imagine this. I won't ask how old you were at that time because we revealed what year it was, so we'll keep that respectful. But as a young boy at the time,
yes.
That would have been mesmerising for sure.
For sure, but that's one of my standout memories. Like, it's 40 years later, and that is still one of my highlights of my rallying life. It really is, And again, I was standing there to get your photo taken, move on to the next place. But it's still that thing that I can still see myself standing there yet. It's just amazing. So, like, those young guys that got their photo taken with Josh McErlane or Seb Ogier at the weekend, in another 40 years they'll be showing their grandkids, look at this. That's the kind of thing that I think should be promoted in rallying. That's that's where we need to be going.
Yeah, and I think I referenced it before. We were talking about Canaries, but this is why it is really important that we make sure we're going to events that have a genuine rally hungry population. And I know you can argue that you can establish that by taking an event for certain times, but again, I feel like I find myself talking about Ireland because I'm speaking with you two, but can you imagine the fanfare if it came back to Ireland? They're looking like earliest possible 27 at this point, but it's not impossible. And you just know if it came there, the fever for the event would be off the charts. There's some countries we go to. I think Paraguay this year should be the same, and based on what we've seen. Others maybe potentially not so much, but there's other factors in play with those. So yeah, but I do think it's important that we consider that because, yeah, as much as it's important to have a TV audience which will like dramatic stage and everything else, you do need to have fans make atmosphere is the point in any sport. But I think particularly in rallying, because in no other sport do they have such an active role. We saw even at the weekend there with Gregoire Munster going off. And by the way, I have to say that was either the best bit of precision driving ever or blind luck to not hit that tree. To slot it right through that gap was incredible. So fair play to you, Greg. But yeah, the fans were able to actually get the car out and keep him in the rally. And you don't get that in other sports. Yes, you could argue in football there's the so-called 12th man and all this kind of stuff, but they're not actually kicking the ball.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So it is great. Rallying is a people sport.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And Conor, like in general, this year has been very positive. There is a feel-good factor around the whole championship this year.
Yeah, I think so. It probably was helped by the fact we had Thierry Neuville winning the championship last year for Hyundai, and that's mixing it up, taking it away from Toyota. And I suppose the competition, okay, it was a very dominant performance by Toyota and the Canaries, probably quite lopsided, and we really did see both Hemsport and Hyundai struggle badly, but we're getting into that summer season now of a bunch of, is there 7 gravel rallies in a row, look, something like that? So this is going to maybe give a bit more equilibrium to the competition and hopefully see a lot more competition depending on road order as well as, people find the feet like, Oit Tanak let loose on gravel stages up against Cali Rovanpera. Like, it's going to be fantastic to watch over the next few events.
Look, you want to jump in there and say?
To be honest, I can just copy and paste what Conor said, really. I do think, as he's correctly highlighted, that I'm curious by the shift. Because it always used to be back in the day that you'd start talking about Portugal as the rally where you know kind of where everyone's at. You've got Monte in Sweden, which are clearly very specific. Safari the same. And Canaries, yes, you can learn things from that, but it's the only... Well, the other tarmac rallies we've got in the year, Central European and Japan, are both muckier, for want of a better phrase. So this is kind of only what pure dry racing style tarmac event. So yeah, Portugal is I think where we might see more of a form book open up. But it has to be said, Elvin Evans, the start he's had this year has been remarkable. I don't think anybody really saw it coming, which sounds harsh to say because he's been in that conversation at the front for ages now, but he's never really been the one to lead things from the front on the front foot and be so attacking, I guess, in his style, and potentially went a little bit backwards on that. In Canaries, he seemed a little bit more to me like maybe, I don't want to say the old Elvin Evans, but just not quite sure with the car, not fully happy, all that kind of stuff. But I think not the head drops, but he's just not, you start getting his own head a little bit. Sweden this year, that response to Taco on the final morning was mega. The sort of stuff we hadn't seen from him for a while. So clearly the change of Hankook tyres and the removal of hybrid has worked for him. You could say the exact opposite for Rovanpera, but he's been doing something in preparation because that was mighty what we saw from him there. So the question is now, can he keep doing that? He's kind of cautious about that. He knows that he's made progress on one surface. It doesn't guarantee anything for gravel, and I guess the unfortunate thing for him, sorry, massive monologue, but the unfortunate thing for him is he's 43 points off Evans, but for Portugal is starting just one place back. So this is a great thing for Elvin because he's got the safety of a points lead, but arguably his biggest rival is the one that's second. So there's not going to be a massive offset, and it'll still be better for Rovanpera, but not by loads. Thierry Neuville's the other unlucky one. He's, I think, 2 points ahead of Tanak in 5th, and Neuville's 3rd. So it's funny how all this kind of works out. But yeah, I just really hope that we can see, I guess, a bit more from the Hyundais. Canaries was definitely a very extreme example of what's not working for the team right now. But yeah, it's been 4 Toyota wins in a row. In 3 of the 4 rallies, they've scored maximum points in the manufacturers. So it's looking a little bit one-sided just now, but there are 10 rounds still to go. So I'm sure something will change.
Because Conor, we've seen last year, like Hyundai maybe hadn't the best start, but the way they turned the season round, it was unbelievable. And I expect them to do the same this year too, because they come on so strong towards the end of the year. And probably tarmac was never really the surface that maybe seemed to suit the Hyundai the same. So and you have to take your hats off Toyota. We're done, and like it looked as if at one point they were going to look out the top 5 positions here at the weekend.
Exactly, and if you look back last year, you know, Hyundai came into last year with a very twitchy car that was very nervous. They got that car as the year developed and they did the various bits of development. They got that car settled down, you know, to the extent where they, you know, Thierry won the championship with it, and Oit, you know, had a very strong performance as well, except for, you know, a couple of very bad accidents. It'll come to them, you know. They've got to learn the hand-cooked tires. They don't have the hybrid, so there's a lot of just tweaking and you know, and Tanak and Neville, and look how strong Formo has been. You know, considering everybody says that car was built around Thierry Neville, Formo has come in there and very quickly adapted, if not nearly conquered that car compared to, you know, Thierry Neville just over the last couple of events. So you can only see that the strength of Tanak and the strength of Neville will come to the fore as we get further into the season. And I think particularly when we get onto those gravel events. And I think Tanak is, you know, he's a lot to prove, points to prove, especially after last year and the previous year. And I think he'll be very hard to hold back.
And like, look, that's a very good point there that Conor made too. Like last year, I think, you know, everybody was saying, oh, Formo was the star turn more or less of the season. And like we thought maybe coming to Hyundai, he'll get overshadowed there. He hasn't. He has really shown.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree both in that statement and that Conor saying it was really shrewd, because it's true. And it's funny thinking back now, actually, that there was quite a lot of people that questioned that move and thought, why is he leaving M Sport for Hyundai? Oh, you're going to be third driver, you're not going to have this or that. But it's looking fairly smart. Isn't it? He's properly held his own. I'm not surprised. If I'm honest, I kind of knew he had the potential. What has been interesting to see is that on half the rallies this year, he has finished as the top Hyundai. Now, there are factors in that. Occasionally his teammates have dropped the ball, and Neuville and Canaries, I think he probably would have beaten Formo if it wasn't for a puncture on the penultimate stage. But to be in that position, to be beating 2 world champions, I felt a bit brutal, actually, because it was a piece we're doing on Sunday morning where you had Neuville sat on a bus stop with Formo. I think Tanak was around, so talking about, oh yeah, there's the 2 world champions in Formo. And it felt really harsh. Like, but that is the reality he's in. Like both of his teammates are world champions. He does not look out of place one bit. So yeah, I've been really impressed, but I think it shouldn't be a surprise given what we saw from him last year. The year out he took in 23. Yet again, I think Malcolm Wilson and M Sport have absolutely aced that.
Masterstroke.
As you see, taking him out of that pressured environment, put him into the Rally 2 car. He got brilliant results out of that car, which obviously helps M Sport. It helped the driver rebuild his confidence. He's hungry when he gets back. He's learned to be more patient. Yeah, I really like the cut with Formo right now, and I kind of hate the phrase "future world champion" because it's impossible to predict that. But if that was a phrase I chose to use, I'd put Formo in that category for sure.
Because Conor, like again, the future world champion. I think headstrong's probably not the right statement either. Mentally strong, I think, would be maybe where I'm going. He doesn't seem to be overawed with this. I'm competing against these world champions. I need to play second fiddle to them. He feels that he should be every bit as equal to anybody around him. Absolutely,
a very modest confidence.
Yeah.
He has come into that seat with all the pressure and all the naysayers, as Luke, pointed out. And people basically saying online he was mad. And yet he didn't faze him. He ignored it and has gone in there, and he hasn't overdriven that car either. There's been no stupid mistakes. There's been no Monte Carlo disasters where the Puma ended up in a ball. There's been nothing like that at all. He's been very calm, very collected, and steadily confident he can prove himself.
That's for sure. And look, I suppose then looking at the, we've kind of covered off, but we didn't really cover the whole of Toyota off. Takamoto, he needed a strong result there at the weekend, and I think he's back to where a confidence, his confidence took a real good lift there at the weekend. He showed his speed, he showed his determination, he showed what he can do.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's been a very strange year for Taka because he's had 2 accidents on final days and 2 really good results. Sweden obviously stands out there as the highlight. That's the closest we've ever seen him come to a rally win. I don't want to say he was unlucky not to win because there was no luck in it. Evans did a better job, but obviously Evans is a rally winner already. He's a more experienced driver, all the rest of it. So it was very, very encouraging for Taka and Aaron Johnson to be in that position. Kenya, for me, that shouldn't have happened. I can understand how it happened because I think he was essentially under instruction to go for it. So that's the good thing from Taka's perspective is he's not let the team down because they've asked him to go for it. Obviously, they do that with the expectation that he's not going to crash the car, but it can happen. They know that and they've taken that and on board and everything else. But yeah, as you say, Canaries, and I was surprised because, again, I probably shouldn't be, but he talked so much over the weekend about this needs to find confidence. And I just kind of assumed he meant with the car and the setup and everything in Canaries. But I asked him to clarify, and no, he meant it's just general confidence after what happened in Kenya. And we all know he's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. What you see is absolutely what you get with Taka. And he's absolutely one of the most popular guys in the service park. He's just so friendly and warm, and you find yourself rooting for him constantly. So yeah, it was nice to see that, as I say, he sort of addressed that issue he had in Kenya with a strong performance in Canaries. I just think for now we kind of need to see a run of more consistent results, less dips, just keep it where it's at. But let's not forget Portugal's been a very, very good event for him in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see something quite special for him in a few weeks.
That's for sure. And then Sami Pajer, he has come in and it seems to be building his place in the team there. He's not setting the world alight, but he's not doing anything really silly. Yes, he was a bit unlucky at the weekend, but still, I think he's shown he deserves his place in the team.
Yeah, for me, absolutely. I have to say it's, again, though, as you say, it's strange. I think maybe what he did last year almost set the bar too high. In that he came in Finland and he was 4th fastest on his first stage or something with a spin, and then he won after his 9th stage. It was incredible to see that. But it's not quite been the same this year with pace. But obviously, it's important to remember that last year, that's a complete, certainly to begin with, it was a one-off. He got Chile because the team decided to bench Taka, and then CER was a bonus. So when he did Finland, it was a total right, I need to show people what I can do. Very much like what Martin Sesk did last year with his 2 amazing performances in Poland and Latvia. This year, Sammy's got the benefit of a full season program. He doesn't have to go out, very much same as Josh McElwain, actually. He doesn't have to go out there and immediately just set the world's best times because that's counterproductive. This year is a learning year. But yeah, it was nice to see from his perspective that he had the speed in Canaries because I think we've all known it's there, but he hasn't necessarily shown it massively yet this year. But yeah, to be ahead of Katsuto, I thought was impressive. And as you said before, Toyota's flying top 5. They really show how well they'd got that car sorted for the road, didn't it? Yeah. But yeah, shame to see what happened to him, of course. And actually, I'm slightly surprised he wasn't able to restart on Sunday. He'd taken a wheel off the front, but I kind of thought it may have been repairable. But there we are. He missed out on some, I guess, stage kilometres, but he'll dust himself down. And very curious to see what he can do now we're getting into the gravel.
Yeah, and Connor, unbelievable. We haven't mentioned an 8-time world champion at this stage. OJ just done the OJ things, but it just shows you the level that Rovin Perez at, that he couldn't even match him and wasn't prepared to take the risks either to do it.
Yeah. What was OJ's last seat? Monte Carlo? There's a bit of a gap there, but from his last outing, I suppose he was with trying to get himself back up to speed. I know he's an 8-time world champion, but still, that lack of seat time probably does have an impact for a day or so. Um, I don't know. Rovanpera was maybe just on a completely different level. And funny, it's one of the things I know we're talking about OJ, but I want to ask Luke something about Cali. But OJ played the long game. He waited it out. Cali didn't make a mistake. There was nothing to monopolize for OJ. But he's on a part-time program as well, so he's not fighting for the championship this year. He's there to get points, bring the car home for the team, and I think that's what he did and maybe resolved himself to do, would be my take on it. I don't know, look, you were there.
Yeah, I think very quickly he realised where he was, in that Rovanpera was just in a different league. I would agree on the seat time, because if you look at the stage times, I think OJ was third on the first one, and then pretty much thereafter he was kind of the best of the rest. And I do genuinely mean that. It's like, and he said it to us as well. It's like, you take one man out of the equation, I'd have won a lot of stages and I'd have won the rally. OJ was still ahead of everybody else. It's just Rovanpera was mighty. It was, I guess, a stark reminder of just what he can do. We've all known he can do it, but yeah, it was. If I was one of his rivals, I'd be quite concerned by what I'd seen at the weekend. But yeah, OJ, he never likes to get beaten. We know that. None of them do, but particularly OJ, he's very, very, very competitive. I guess we did see it last year when he kind of accidentally became a title contender, and Greece is one we all remember with the sort of tactics in Newville and everything else. It felt like a bit of a desperate dice throw at that point, which in years gone by probably would have worked. But yeah, he's in a different situation, as you said, Connor. He knows that if he comes second, doesn't really matter, because he's still doing his job for the team. He's still backed brilliant points for the team, and he can spin that how he likes. He can say, well, I'm contributing to Manufacturers Championship. Again, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but you can say, oh, well, I've not been here for the last 2 rallies and I'm still second. So he's kind of in a no-lose situation for me. But yeah, you can definitely tell that he doesn't enjoy getting beaten. It's not what he's here for. But then you give him the chance to speak and he'll tell you that he's the best of his generation. And for me, those 3 words are very, very telling, because Rovanpera is a different generation to OJ, but it still frustrates me. I keep saying it all the time. I want to see Rovanpera versus OJ in a full year. It would be amazing. Yeah. It's not going to happen, but I'd love to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Conor, there's something else you want to ask Luke there too?
Yeah, it was supposed to be about Cali. So Cali had the year out last year, part program, and he spent his time on racetracks, drifting or racing. And how much do you think that came into play in Canaries? Because I suppose it was the surface that's closest to a racetrack that they're going to be on all year. And we saw him in the first few rounds struggle to get to grips with a Hankook. But yet, everything just seemed to fall into place. He seemed very relaxed, very natural in the Canaries. And I wonder how much of that is from the experience that he picked up from last year, if anything.
I love this question, and this sounds a bit egotistical, but mainly because I spent a lot of the weekend thinking this myself. So I'm on the same wavelength completely. When asked, he's fairly non-committal in his usual kind of Rovanpera non-show-off way. But I think it's definitely helped. You got to remember the last time he'd done any kind of tarmac rally, really, because he did Monty this year, but that's always a debate of how pure that is in terms of, is it tarmac, is it a mixture of itself? But excluding Monty, the last tarmac rally he'd done in the WRC, and I know we've done Kalari in the last year, was Japan in 2023. So it was a long time he hadn't done this surface. And I think people maybe unfairly forgot how accomplished he is on tarmac, but I definitely think he made an improvement. If you look to Spain 2022, and I know this was the rally just after he won his first championship, so I suspect he backed off a little bit in that, but it was a straight fight with him and OJ beat him. Yeah. And that time OJ was still in a part-time program. There was nothing different about any of that, but OJ was the one to beat, and this time it completely switched. But it's interesting because obviously you talk about the tyres and everything. This was the hard compound tyre they used. They hadn't used that in Monte Carlo, so it was different. But to me, there's more to it than that. I've not been able to put my finger on it yet. I've had some interesting conversations with people that have suggested certain theories. I wouldn't want to put those out there until I've had them substantiated, as it were. But yeah, he's done something clearly in his preparation to get back up to where we know he can be. But I do think it's also important to remember that he was not far off in Kenya either before the rally started to sort of turn on itself. It wasn't like he was struggling to the same extent we've seen in Monte Carlo and Sweden. But yeah, just to get a bit wider about it for a second, this is why I think the dynamic we've got is fascinating. Hopefully it's going to be more than just these two guys in the championship fight, but if it is Evans versus Rovanperä, Evans is the man that's made hay while the sun's been shining, as they say, in that when he had the advantage, he's used it. Well aware that Rovanperä was going to get there at some point. It looks like he now has, so it's game on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it has to be good for the whole sport in general. And then I suppose we should start talking about M Sport too before we finish up. I suppose Canaries was probably not a true reflection. The other events, they haven't been far away. Canaries, I suppose, has been a bit of a fly in the ointment. But I seen some comment online there about Josh. I think he has acquitted himself really, really well at the first three events.
Put it this way, the Josh McElwain I saw in Las Palmas was a world away from the Josh McElwain I saw in Gap and Monaco. He looked, I don't know what the right word to use is, he lost is too strong, but he didn't look confident that he belonged there. And he's talked about it so many times candidly, like he never really expected to be in this position. So obviously he's delighted that he is, he's making the most of it, but walking around with Neville, Tanak, Ogier, Rovanperä, being in these guys' company, it's like he just suddenly was like a rabbit in the headlights. And for all events to be starting off with Monte Carlo was really quite daunting, but he got a tremendous result there. Sweden, the pace was genuinely extraordinary. I don't think anybody really, even he himself, would have expected him to be quite as competitive as he was. Safari. You can never read too much into that. It's kind of if the event chooses to be kind to you. See where you end up. I think the thing for me that's really impressed with Josh is the determination to keep going when things get tough. We saw it in Sweden when he put it off on Sunday morning. He dug the car out. And I remember I'd written a little snap stage report. I had written, this is a professional mistake, so I'm brave to admit this potentially, but I'd just written that he'd retired. I just assumed that's what was going to happen. And then I had to sheepishly go back and correct that when I walked outside and saw that it was changing. So I was like, okay, wow, he's actually managed to get that. He lost, I can't remember how many minutes, but he stayed in the rally. So it was quite remarkable. It'd be easy to give up in that situation, but he knew that getting every stage kilometre was important. Same in Kenya when the steering arm broke. They're the two of the guys were him and Owen Tracy, changing a steering arm in the middle of the African wilderness. Like that determination is key. Obviously, I guess in Canaries it's a shame. It's the first time he's not managed to complete every single stage mile, but these things do happen. I would say Canaries, looking at the season as a whole, would have to go down as his weakest event because of that. But I still think a lot of people will be surprised. Again, feels like the wrong word, but I don't think people expect him to be as competitive as he's been. I think he can be proud of what he's done, considering where he's at experience-wise. Yeah,
and like Connor is coming into events now that he has knowledge of. Like Portugal's next up. He has competed there before. Things are going to turn around for him. It's going to be an upward trend from here on in.
Well, that's it. He's getting into familiar territory. Events that he did well in the WRC too, particularly Portugal was a very strong event for him last year, and that's going to help his confidence. He's gone in with better knowledge, better understanding. The more seat time he gets in that Puma, the better he understands that car as well, and becomes one with the machine. Okay, there's factors that come in there, be it you could get a puncture or the weather or whatever, but bar that, and that could hit anybody. It's just him and Owen working together, improve. And again, him and Owen are a new combination as well. There's so many new factors for Josh, and I genuinely feel and think he's done remarkably well. Like, he went out in the Canaries. He went out on the last day. He didn't put it off on the Friday. He didn't put it off on the Saturday. So he's done well. As I say, there's no stupid mistakes happening on the shakedown or the first or second, stage. He's doing really well. And look, I wanted to, can you describe, like, what is the learning curve for Josh here? How steep is it?
I like how you tried to elevate me, because I can't pretend to know what it's like to jump from Rally 2 to Rally 1. I'll be honest.
But you're our podium winner, you know. From
yeah. So, no, actually, this is a little story with these two. We're chatting away at regroup, and there was quite a lot of time actually. I think the organisers in Canaries had expected the traffic to be a lot worse, so they had a longer time than normal, which is great for us as media, because you actually get a chance not just to interview the drivers, but actually a bit of crack with them. Which some people may have seen the video we did with Tanak and Josh out there and stuff. The mood was more relaxed, but Josh was about to check in, and him and Owen were talking to me, and I can't remember what I said to him. He was obviously struggling with understeer and stuff, so I sort of half joked, all you need to do is put your right foot on that pedal and just steer it. And he sort of looked at me, and then like thinking, oh, okay, fine. And then Owen sort of chirped up and was like, oh, you just listen to him. He's a British Rally Championship class winner. And I had to point out to Owen that you've done me a little bit too nice there. Not quite a class winner. May have been a podium and may have finished behind Kyle McBride, who crashed in Super Rally and still beat me. To which that drew quite a lot of laughter. So there you go. Always time to stay humble. But to answer the question with sincerity, massive. I mentioned, I guess, the psychological factors before about suddenly being a driver that, and of course there was people interested in what he did last year, but so much more attention now. Now he's in the Rally 1 class in terms of, I guess, independent media, the WRC's coverage. Everybody wants a slice of him now. He's a big ticket. He's one of potentially only 9 cars on an entry list. Like, he is an absolute of the top class anyway. So there's all that stuff to deal with. And then there's just the sheer difference in how the car needs to be driven. And I think that's why you've potentially seen that its pace has been not as strong on tarmac as on other surfaces, because tarmac is where the aero comes into its own even more. Just having the belief that the car is going to turn like it is massive. You have to, I can't imagine completely, I'm not a driver, but it is having that faith that it's going to do all that is big. I think what has played into his favour a little bit is the fact we've lost hybrid for this year. That would have been another thing he had to learn, which he hasn't had to get on top of. But yeah, it is a massive difference. We've seen drivers that have kind of maybe masked over that, like the way Martin Sess came into the car last year made it almost seem, oh, okay, this can't be that difficult, but it is. I think Martin's did a really mega job of fooling everyone, essentially, and he obviously did it on rallies he knew like the back of his hand, so it was a very, very smart move from him. But yeah, I don't think that challenge can be underestimated. Yes, it's a rally car, but so much about it is different. Even the ergonomics of the interior, you've got the tubular chassis and the roll cage, the driver and co-driver sat much further in the car. The whole thing is just different. But yeah, as I said, I think I've certainly noticed a difference in his demeanour. He looks more comfortable now being at that level. And as you mentioned as well, Connor, I'm very curious to see what he can do on gravel now, because my understanding is he's kind of been under the instruction from the guys at Motorsport Island Rally Academy just to get through these first events and bank the experience. And when we get to events like Portugal that he's done several times, let's maybe give it a bit more of a go and see where he's at. And yeah, he'll have a good road position. There's 11 stages on Friday, I think, without a service. So there's plenty of opportunity, Josh. Not that I'm bigging you up too much. But there we go.
And like something you picked up on something there you mentioned as well, that interaction between Tanak and Josh as well too. Lovely to see, you know, the old experienced hand coming over and kind of working him into the club almost, you know, like, that has to do his confidence the world of good. That, like, you know, Tanak made a point of going over to speak to him.
He did. Sorry, if you saw me checking my phone, if you're watching this on video, I sent him a message before we started recording this, as Kevin and Connor well know. It was actually a picture I took of them. And I'll be careful what I say, because we're in what you'd call a controlled environment, not an uncontrolled one, so I can't be using certain words. But I said, if things go to... I can automatically need that. Stage ends, don't they? Someone in the corner just shouting that. Yeah, if things go that way, then you've always got this moment. So I was just checking his reply to me, which she has, with a couple of laughing emojis. So there we go. Yeah, but it is a special thing, isn't it? Like, I suspect for Josh at the minute, his world is so intense. He doesn't always have the time to think about it. But as I say, no matter what happens in his career, this has always happened to him then. So yeah, it was great. And there was genuine interest from Mike to sort of, I guess, learn about Josh. Which is great, and I think that must feel quite surreal if you're him.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose then too, like Luke Barry, you know, standing in the media zone talking to these guys, like these, you know, this was your dream ever since childhood. Is it like still surreal to be standing there, sticking the microphone in Seb Ogier's and asking him questions and thinking, I need to think of another question, not going to go, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah, I think I'd be really, really sad if that wasn't the case. If that ever happens, I think I need to stop doing it, to be honest. When you're in that situation, you have to put that to the back of your mind because you're there to do a job and you can't. I think rallying journalism, as it were, is like potentially softer than other parts of journalism. It's not like we're at Downing Street in the UK, number 10, with these really serious, hard questions. We all know rallying is a luxury thing. As someone said to me this year, it's not like we're saving lives in what we do. It's purely just motorsport. So there's a degree of you don't have to go 2-footing with your question all the time. But yeah, I do certainly have moments. And I think it's more when I come home from an event because you're in this little bubble. And bless her, my girlfriend, she puts up with it a lot because I go away and I sort of forget that she's still living our life we'd have without me. But I've gone away into this amazing little fantasy bubble land. And then I come back and it's like, and I don't mean to sound in any way disparaging to my home life, but you come back and there was a Monday this week, I had a day off. So I had a bit of a lie-in, treated myself. And you're just like, wow, 12 hours ago I was doing this, 24 hours doing that. And you're like, it's quite surreal that, exactly. And it's like, it is quite funny how, I'm incredibly, incredibly privileged to be in the position that I am. And I hope people can see it with everything that I do, but I try and convey that it is just exciting, and the whole thing is just great to be part of. And there are these moments where I'll watch things back, particularly when you watch it back, because that's like physical evidence that you were there. And it's like, I used to watch coverage as a child, and you see people like Paul King, wherever they were, any of the people doing the TV coverage and commentary and asking questions and everything else. And it's like, now, technically speaking, I am doing that. Not in the same way, but it's the same job, and it's it's quite something.
And Connor, we spoke about this, between ourselves. He's fitting right in. He's a natural at it, isn't he? He has a lovely way with the drivers. It's a very natural flow.
Look, genuinely he is, and if they ever bring the old Top Gear rally specials back, he'll be there in his tweed jacket presenting.
His white socks and loafers, we have to see that.
No one wants to see that. That would be terrifying.
No, genuinely, it is a genuine pleasure to watch the coverage and the behind the scenes takes and the information and just that extra bit that, as a fan or as a spectator, you kind of want to know what's going on. And one of my particular joys is going onto YouTube to watch the, before the stage starts, those kind of behind the scenes, that bit of extra information, just watching the drivers and the co-drivers getting prepped while they're, just before the stage starts. And it's fantastic that Luke and Colin and David and Nat are getting in behind the scenes to see what's going on. Bits that very, very few people ever really get to see of what happens on on a rally.
Well, do you know what? I should be careful saying this because it would make that job a lot harder for us at Dirtfish, but anyone can do that. That is not a restricted part of the rally scene. Sometimes they'll go beyond the closed road barrier. It depends where they stop, but if they don't, literally anyone in the world can get themselves there and just be around the drivers. Granted, you're probably not going to stick a microphone in their face, but you can be around it, and it's incredible. I love the moments in particular, and there was one on Saturday at the weekend where you just sit back for a second. It's difficult if you're trying to speak at the same time, so I couldn't do it too much. But you try and examine what's going on, and particularly like the heavyweight drivers. So Ogier and Robin Perrin, I'm thinking of particularly at the weekend, because by Saturday they're running together on the road, and they're obviously not really in a massive battle because Robin Perrin had that gap. But the sort of big question was Ogier going to try and have a swing at him? And the first stage of the morning is generally going to be his best chance. So just watching their demeanour. And the two of them, they actually went and had a conversation with each other about stage conditions and stuff. But you can just sense the whole, just watching everyone's different preparation tactics, they're sort of getting into the zone there. The body line, Takamoto Katsuchi is always one. He's very consistent. He will always sit standing by the door of his car, staring at his pace notes, memorising them, just completely locked in on the pace notes. You've got Thierry who will always smile and have a chat. FOMO will have a bit of a goof around, as I think I proved at the weekend. Seeing that clip, no further comment from me, frankly. What happened there? I will improve.
You're not going to go dancing with the stars anyway.
Probably not. No, you see, some people have certain talents. I'm yet to discover mine. So there you go. That's what I'd say. But yeah, serious point. I think it is. Yeah, it's really fascinating just to see, because this is the stuff you don't get when you watch the linear broadcast, because you can't. They're focused on the stage. But this is raw rallying, and as I say, it's without waxing too much lyrical about rallying, because all of us listening to this podcast, we're rally fans. We know how great it is, but just this. And David Evans, he said it to me on the road section once, actually, at the weekend as well. We were driving out of the go-kart stage on the way to... We were going back to service. They were heading back out to a different stage. But on the road section, right on the south coast of the island, you've got beautiful sunshine. You've got the Atlantic Ocean to your right. There's Elvin Evans and Scott Martin stop changing their tyres and stuff. And it's like, this is just mental. World Championship leaders just on a road section changing tyres. And it's like, you don't get that anywhere else. So yeah, rallying is the best, basically. That's all I'll say.
That's the proudest day and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all we said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.